Welcome back, everyone, to the Sales Show. You have been asking, we are answering. I brought in the expert on your main question this week, which was Simon, how can I land a paid board seat in a company that I'm passionate about? How can I help them and add an income stream by doing so? And you had a ton of sub questions like, how many can I have at once? Should I do this as my main thing moving on in my career? So I brought in the expert on this, Callum Laing, everyone. He wrote a whole book about it. It's called Boardroom Blueprint. And yes, there it is. And how you can boost your career with a board seat in 60 days. That's what the book says. So we're going to explore that. He wrote many more books on how small businesses can use leverage and scale, how they can agglomerate, which is his method that he has invented. So that and he wrote a book about entrepreneurial investing and one about progressive partnerships. So we might do more episodes in the next years together. But first of all, welcome. And how can we get started with these board seats?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me, Simon. Looking forward to chatting about this. It's always a favorite topic. I think, look, probably even before you get onto how is better to ask why. And one of the things, so I know your audience is sort of passionate about sales, and I guess one of the things that I have been trying to solve for 25 years of being an entrepreneur is how do you fast track trust? So how do you build trust as quickly as possible with prospects and investors and suppliers and staff and everything else? And so I kind of built a whole framework around trying to get into what I call the inner circle in any industry. Sort of all the cool stuff happens in the inner circle. And so I have a framework around how you do that. And one part of that is building authority. And one of the best ways I found to build authority is sitting on board seats. It's kind of a shortcut or a hack that people give you a lot more, assume a lot more credibility for you if you're sitting on board seats. And so it's a very valuable tool. I mean, obviously, the origins of the word authority and author are the same. And so that's one of the reasons why I write books. But yeah, I found that the board seats were an incredibly useful hack. And then as a young entrepreneur, I kind of accidentally learned something. I was going out trying to find investment for my company. And I remember there was one company that I was trying to raise for, and I was really struggling to raise money at a $1 million valuation. And I kind of got frustrated. And what I did was I ended up building an advisory board for my business. And so I invited somebody from Google, I invited somebody from Microsoft, someone from Yahoo, to sit on my advisory board. And interestingly, as soon as I had those people on my advisory board, I was suddenly able to raise money at a $10 million valuation. It was like night and day. Suddenly, and again, it was kind of a lot of it was about trust. People sort of assumed, well, look, if you've got someone from Google and Yahoo and Microsoft on your board, you must be doing something right. Now, nobody actually asked who they were. Yeah, they could have been janitors for all it mattered. They were very good people, and it was very useful. But that was it was a big eye opener to me, the power of advisory boards. And then you kind of fast forward, I guess 15 years. My core business, like you mentioned, is putting groups of companies together, taking them public. And we've done over 100 deals in the last 10 years, taken over 100 companies public. And so I ended up sitting on a lot of boards and being advising a lot of boards. And what I realized was when you're not on boards, they seem like they're this very big, powerful thing with amazing people that know
Yeah,
everything.
what
And
happens in there?
yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is that question, what happens in there, is that the boards themselves have been very deliberate about being exclusive. They don't want people to know what happens in there. They don't want people to get in the boards. It's been this very closed environment. And where that comes from is I remember the first company we took public, we built our board and we put entrepreneurs like us from around the world that we wanted on the board. And the investment banks, who are the gatekeepers to the public markets, and the public markets are the gatekeepers to the investors, said, no, you can't have that. You've got to have people on your board that have 10, 20 years public company board experience. And I remember thinking at the time, well, look, there's not that many people out there with that much experience. And so what you end up with is a very small pool of people getting paid a lot of money to sit on lots and lots of boards, and they don't really care about the companies that they're sitting on. So we had to kind of get these people on that,
What
you
is
know,
the
that are being.
remuneration ballpark in a range?
So it's very variable. I now have a company that trains people and puts them on board seats. Oftentimes, the first few board seats you do, the advisory board seats, will just be for free. So you basically say, hey, look, I'm doing it for the credibility, I'm doing it for the connections, I'm doing it to learn about your industry. And so it's not free, you're getting value from it, but that's the exchange. What happens once you're sat on a few boards is that companies will start to see you and want you to sit on their board, and then they will invite you. And then the fees can vary enormously. So we have members that are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting on a single board. You've got basically the people that are earning millions. That's determined by the market cap of the company. So the biggest companies in the world will pay hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. The smallest companies will be sort of paying 10, 20 grand a year for basically a part-time role. We are sort of entry level for the companies that we take public is around $40,000. That's pretty standard to sit on the board of a publicly listed company, but a private one can be much, much smaller. But what I realized was it had set up a situation where you had this very small pool of people sitting on these board positions. They had no interest in, there's been all this talk about getting diversity on boards and trying to get fresh ideas and fresh thinking into boards. But nobody on the boards wanted that because it's risky for them to bring in an outsider. And so what was happening that was driving me nuts was that there were very talented people, entrepreneurs, women, minorities, disabled people, young people that could add massive value to company boards, but they would never get onto the boards because they didn't know the right people. They hadn't gone to the right schools. They didn't know the right secret handshakes. And so because I was inside the system, I was able to kind of find the hacks, and so I ended up sort of writing the book on how you do this, because it is a situation where nobody's going to offer you a board seat unless you've already got board experience, which is, it's a little bit like when you started your career, nobody would give you work because you didn't have work experience. Same thing happens at the other end of your career with board seats.
And usually you get asked to join a board. There is no pitch to go there,
So
right?
yeah, look, one of the things that we talk about a lot in the program, so first of all, like understand the situation that's out there. So you've got 330 million for-profit companies in the world. Less than 1% of those actually have an active functioning board. So all of the publicly listed companies, most big companies, but the majority of companies, which are small businesses, don't have an active functioning board, which means that if you are applying for a board seat, you and everybody else is applying for a very small number of board seats at the top. And I would also argue that none of those board seats are genuine, because like I said, boards don't want to hire someone they don't know. It's always friend of a friend. It's always someone that they trust. And then HR has to put out a job advert or a
Or you have
recruitment company.
worked together over a year. So I get asked sometimes when I consult a client for 1 or 2 years and I'm their strategy advisor, and then they say, hey, would you join our board?
And join the board. Exactly
Or
right. Yeah.
or you have been
And
restructuring or financing them, right?
Yes, and so that's a good point, because also nobody wants a board member. What they want is the result you can give them. So what is the problem that you can solve? And so this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is that they will approach a company and say, hey, would you like me to sit on your board? No. Like, why would I? But if you go and say, hey, look, if you want me to help you get into a new industry, or you want me to help you expand into this country, or raise capital, or find new clients, I can do that. And by the way, it'd be a lot easier for me to do that if I was sat on your board. That's
It's
a
either
much more
it's
intelligent
either
way of
access to capital, right? Oh, this person can make it easier for us to access new capital pools or distribution or a specific skill, right? In every board, I've seen a legal person sitting in there because legal is so important and it's a strategic competence and it's different in every country. It's a headache for every CEO. And so in the board, you have a legal person usually, or a tax person, or
Yeah, I mean, it's not so critical. It kind of depends on the business, because you can have what's on your board isn't necessarily so a lot of people kind of think of a board as a consultant position. And so I remember when I don't sit on many boards now because I push them all into our community, but um, when I was sitting in some fairly high profile publicly listed companies, I would get every week somebody would pitch me on why they should be on my board. And it always came through the frame of what they'd spent their career doing. So I've spent 20 years in HR, I can help you on the board, or I've spent 20 years in supply chain management. Basically, what they're pitching is a consulting service. And if I wanted that, I would hire a consultant. So a board is a very different skill set. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, legal is one that sort of you see pop up a lot. But actually, it comes down to, are you able to solve a problem for the business? That's the biggest thing. And different companies have different problems, but universal ones is that if you are well connected to investors, you're going to be much more popular, because almost every business is looking for growth funding.
so access to capital is one thing. Access to distribution channels, access to specific skills. What is it that people can prepare for? Oh, let me improve in those skills so that I can be more valuable.
Yeah, so I tend to work on the framework that, look, if you're kind of at a management level or above, and you've had at least 10 years of experience, it's less about having to learn new stuff, and it's more about being in the right rooms. Look, we've all seen people that are way less talented than us get promoted and do really, really well. And it's not because it's some fluke of nature or God-given gift or anything. It's just, if you put yourself in the right rooms, then you can package what you've got, it becomes very valuable. So the way that we take our members through the program is, the first thing that we will do is put you on a couple of advisory boards, and more often than not, we will put you on a board in an industry that you know nothing about. And that's counterintuitive, but it's quite important. The reason it's important is that if I put you onto a board in an industry, two things happen. The first is, when you see a problem, you want to help, and so you will default to what you think you know the answer to be. And that answer is kind of what you've had in your experience. It might not be the right answer, but you will default to what you know. The second problem that you'll have is that if you're in that industry and you know how to solve problems in the business, then the founder, the CEO, will try and loop you in and turn you into a free consultant. So, and you're a nice person, and so you go, oh, okay, look, I'll come in and I'll show your staff how to do that. And suddenly, before you know it, you've gone from being a non-exec director or board member who should be focusing on strategy to actually getting in the weeds and trying to solve problems. And that's not what you should be doing. Whereas if your background is 20 years of sales and you focus in the IT sector, and then I suddenly put you on the board of a biotech company in Korea, it forces you to ask smart questions. And then what it does is 99 times out of 100, you can't personally solve a problem. So you have to look into your network and you have to say, well, okay, who have I met or who do I know that could solve this problem for the company? And once your brain gets into that pattern matching, everything changes, because all the resources you need, all the money you need, all the talent that you need is in your network somewhere 1 or 2 degrees away. But most of us, especially if we're employees, we're so tied into thinking, hey, look, I get paid for me solving a problem. And as a board member, you earn value by solving a problem, but not necessarily you solving a problem. It's just as valuable if I can introduce you to someone that solves that problem for you. And of course, that's much more scalable as well. And so that's kind of the key skill that we teach.
Oh, it's basically introductions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
huge. So look, you see this in every country. You see politicians that do an absolute lousy job of representing their constituents in House of Parliament or whatever, and then they leave and they suddenly walk into $1 million a year board position of a consulting company, and you think, hang on, did they suddenly become commercially aware and really smart entrepreneurs? No, it's not that. It's because they're so well connected, they can open doors. And so we go through that. We have a five component framework for all of our board members, which at every single level of the game, you're you're having you basically increase these. So it's not sequential, it's something that at every level you do. So if you're getting your first advisory position, which is very easy to do, like just go and find an entrepreneur and say, hey, look, could I put together an advisory board for you, and we'll help you grow the business. Keep it very informal, keep it free, but it just allows you to update your LinkedIn profile and people start to think of you as a board member. But yeah, focus on connections. Who are the connections you need to know at that level? So it's entrepreneurs, it's small company board members, it's angel investors. Those are the kind of the key connections when you're starting out. Now, when you're at the top level, if you kind of want to get into the S&P 500, then you need to be connecting with politicians, with sovereign wealth funds, with hedge funds, with media. Like it's a very different level of connections. The next component is knowledge. So you have connections, then you have knowledge. And again, most people think that the value that they add is their 20 years of IT experience. It's not. So you need to know, you need to have a basic understanding of things like balance sheets and investor relations and understanding sort of the full ecosystem of the business. And again, that at every level, that scales up again. And then it's profile. So those first two are really about how you get the board seats. The third one is profile. And the more you build your profile and get known as a board member, the more opportunities are going to come to you. So, I mean, you're more than aware of the value of profile, but the average person is known by about 200 people. The chances of one of those 200 people having a great opportunity for you are next to nothing. If you're known by 20,000 people or 200,000 people, the chances of one of them having a great opportunity for you go up exponentially. And then everyone looks and goes, wow, you're so lucky. Well, no, I built my profile so that these people would see me as a component in their success. And so that's why it's important to get those first couple of board positions, because even if they're unpaid, even if they're in industries you're not particularly interested in, when you update your LinkedIn profile and you start to combine 20 years of IT experience with, here are the things that board members should be thinking about in terms of IT over the next 5 years. And you just you don't shift, you don't abandon the profile that you've built, but you just start to add in board related topics. Then what happens is you start to get all these inbound leads. And any of our members that have sort of reached that level of success, normally after about a year, they're turning down more board seats than they're accepting. And that puts you in a situation where you can basically say, when somebody reaches out to you and says, look, we've got this problem, we're looking for someone like you to sit on our board, would you be interested? You can turn around and say, well, look, potentially, but I'm going to have to give up one of my other board positions. So what are the commercial terms that would make this attractive to me? And then it's up for them to make you an offer that makes sense for you and for them. And so that's kind of where you get the shift or the transition into having more opportunities than you can handle. And then the final two are value and leverage. And using this methodology, I can teach anyone how to get their first board seat. I mean, I had one of my interns who was 25 years old. He's now sitting on 2 board seats and doing an incredible job. So it's like I can teach anyone to get on a board, but I don't want to add to the number of bad board members out there. We want to have great board members. We want to have people that really add value, and it's so important because actually the best board opportunities you're going to get will come from people that you've sat on a board with who get offered other board seats and say, yeah, look, I was on a board with Simon a couple of years ago. We should definitely have him on this board because every time we had a problem, he knew who to call. He knew what, he got stuff done. And so that's how you kind of break into that inner circle. And then the final one is leverage. And so we have this phrase at Veblen, which is, this is not your final board seat. It's just a stepping stone to the next one. And that's a very useful mindset to have. So you should always be looking, when you join a board, you should always be looking, how can I leverage my network, my knowledge, my contacts to help this company scale as much as possible? Because the more they scale, the more profitable it will be for me. But also, how do I leverage this position for my own good? Because sometimes you're going to join boards that aren't going to go anywhere. You're going to join companies that just, in 6 months' time, they still haven't done anything. And look, that's the nature of small business. Not everyone's going to hit it out to the park. So you always need to have an eye on what's the next leap up, what's the next company that I could leverage this position to get to the next position. So those are the kind of the 5 key components, and at every level you sort of repeat them and bounce up a level.
I just wrote a book about time freedom. So I have to ask you about the time involvement. If we say yes to a board, how much time is it per week, per month, per year that we have to count after one word from our sponsors?
What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprints blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled using the Strategy Sprints method. Order your copy of Strategy Sprints 12 Ways to Accelerate Growth for an Agile Business on Amazon today. And if you love it, leave us a review. For more information, head over to strategysprints.com.
So if we say yes, how much time commitment is it?
Yeah. So look, there's a great saying about board seats, which is, it's a little bit like being a board member is a little bit like being a pilot on a plane. There's long periods of doing nothing followed by very, very intense periods. And so it's very different between the small ones that you start out on and the bigger ones. So what we say for the small ones is just manage expectations up front, and especially if it's no pay or it's low pay, just say, hey, look, I'm willing to give you 2 or 3 hours a month of my time. Anything beyond that, here's my daily rate. And that's perfectly reasonable. And look, as entrepreneurs, they should be doing everything they can to exploit you and get as much value out of you as possible. But look, you're doing it as a stepping stone to the next board seat. So you should be doing exactly the same to them. You should be trying to get as many contacts and connections and as much learning as possible. So a lot of it's just managing expectations up front. Now, when you get into the world of public companies, you can't kind of say, hey, I only do 3 hours a month. Like if they've got, you might have months and months where your skill set is not particularly relevant to challenges that they're trying to fix in the boardroom. You might have days when like they need you all hands on deck.
You are in Singapore. I was on a board of an Austrian company which is global, and
Mhm.
they were doing cranes, like actual things that lift stuff, right? Heavy
Yeah.
machinery. And so in the midst of August, where I usually do my 5 weeks vacation and we are at the beach, I get a call. We're going to Singapore. And I go, why? No, I'm not going to Singapore. Why am I going to Singapore? Well, a crane just fell down. I said, all right, where am I in 3 hours? Be there. We pick you up. We pick you up in 4 hours. And we went to Singapore from Europe to Singapore. These are things that can happen. And when they happen, you have a PR crisis and you're needed.
Yeah. And actually, so one of the things that, so we interview, so we've now got hundreds and hundreds of members in Veblen, sitting on hundreds and hundreds of boards around the world. And most of our members get a board seat within 30 days, not 60 days like the book said. We're quicker now. But the one thing I really filter for is the ability to make decisions, because regardless of your level and your background, if you're someone that struggles to make decisions, it causes so many problems. And to your point, like imagine if, you'd got that phone call and you're like, well, I'll let you know in a couple of days. Like it doesn't happen. Like you have to get on top of this story. You have to help the media out. Like you have to be there for the families, if anyone is injured. All of that sort of stuff is crucially important. And so it is the one thing that I filter really hard on is if you're somebody that struggles to make decisions, because you're never going to have as much information as you want. But if you can get comfortable, we have a framework that we kind of teach to our members as well, which is making sure that if you've got a decision that you need to make, so we call it the Veblen AAA method, which is alignment. So is this decision in alignment with your personal values and with the long-term goals of the company? If it's not, and by the way, like us entrepreneurs have a habit of getting distracted by shiny new things. And as a board, sometimes you have to say, is that really what you need to be doing? So if it's not in alignment, that's a hard no. So if it is in alignment, the next one is it asymmetric in terms of opportunity? And so what I mean by that is if there's a limited downside, but an unlimited upside, it's always worth saying yes. But if there's a limited upside and an unlimited downside, or like we call it sink or steer, like if failing in this project will give you valuable data, then go ahead with it. If failing is going to kill the company, then absolutely it's a hard no. And then the third one is action. Like, what is the action that you can take right now? And sometimes it's, is there a smaller action that I can take that will help move this forward? So that's kind of our AAA decision-making framework. And I think that's been very useful for our members, because if you can't make decisions, this isn't the right career option for you.
I love that. And in my own journey as an entrepreneur, I realized this is a key skill, becoming good and fast with decisions. I used to think, oh, fast decisions can be bad decisions. But actually, yes, the quality of your decision, of course, needs to be, you have to take the best decisions, but you never have the information. So you have to get quick at pattern recognition, risk management, risk calculation. In literally in percentages, you have to find risk models that are quick, that you can do in your head, so that you can decide and move on. Because if you don't decide, so many people can't move, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the sort of framework that I use for, or the I guess mindset I use of it is, think of yourself more as a scientist that's running experiments, rather than a performer that has to get this decision right, has to get this performance right. Otherwise, I kind of get booed out of town. If you're a scientist, then yeah, you're right. You look at the percentage terms and you say, well, look, if it's 51% chance that this can work, let's go for it. And if it fails, as long as I can learn something from the failure and it's not going to kill us, then yeah, we've got data and we can move forward. And I think that's a good way to stop yourself getting over paralyzed by, you know, thinking about the worst case scenarios and not doing anything.
I literally, so I'm 45 and I've started for the first time reading book about probabilities and statistics and this kind of things, which I always found super boring. But right now I find it's the most exciting thing on planet Earth, because what I need is a better, faster model in my head to take quick decisions. And so one thing that I've learned recently is I model two things. One is what's the probability of success versus, and then you know the downside. Okay, 80%. Okay, then I know 20% risk. But then the other one is the probability of catastrophic failure. So I do POP and POC. I do what's the probability of success, but what's the probability of catastrophic failure? And if that is more than 2%, actually maybe the other 80 are contaminated, because you never want something that's irreversible to the downside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sink or steer philosophy. So a few years ago, I did a lot of research into companies that have survived hundreds of years. And I was trying, and there's not a lot of them. And I was trying to find the commonality across all of them. Well, one thing I found interesting is the two industries that have survived the longest are religious iconography and alcohol. So it's like church builders, temple builders, yeah, and then like beer barrels, wine barrels, these sort of
The eternals, the
tourism things.
evergreens.
Yeah. So if you want to build a really, really long-term business, that's the way. But then I was trying to work out, so what do they do different, these companies that survive years? And actually what you realize is they don't do anything clever. What they focus on is not doing anything fatal. So they don't do any bet the house moves. It's all like very, very low risk. And it means that oftentimes they'll underperform. It's a little bit like Warren Buffett, you know,
Yes.
whenever there's a big spike in the tech.com boom or AI, and everyone goes, oh, he's lost it. He's missing out on all these gains. And he just says, look, I don't understand that. It's not worth the risk. And he just kind of tootles along. But over 50, 60, however many years it's been now, he just outperforms the market over and over. So in the short term, he loses. And so that's what you notice with these companies that have been around for hundreds of years, is they don't do anything that's particularly amazing, but they don't do anything stupid either.
Charlie Munger turned it into a method. He said, I do inversion. And he says, I go to the deathbed. So what can I do to kill this company? And then he finds one or two things. If I do that, we're toast. And then he just takes decisions that avoid those two things. And by doing that, he says, we have already done well because we have avoided the catastrophic failure.
Yeah, well, I mean, they famously always said they look for companies that could be run by an idiot, because one day they will be.
They will be. Over 100 years, you might have some mixed results in management.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. So we know how much time commitment it is, how to look at that boundary. You can say, okay, this many amount per hour, 2 hours per month, and then everything above I will charge. And what's the max amount of board seats that's healthy?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think it very much depends on the individual. So we've got retirees that are sitting on 6 or 7 board seats. But they've also kind of, some of them are paid, some of them are unpaid, and they've sort of managed expectations, and they've got nothing else to do. And so they're quite happy doing it. They're quite happy doing the reading around it and trying to help those businesses. And it keeps, it's fun for them. Most of the people that we have that are in full-time employment are normally sitting on maybe 2 or 3 boards. And yeah, we get a lot of people that are sort of in their 40s. And to your point, they're looking for time freedom. So they've got full-time roles. But if they kind of sit out and play the game like they're supposed to, they've got another 20 years of this, and it's just hard yards. And so what they're trying to do is to get on a couple of boards now, start to build their board portfolio, and get to a point where they start to get some paid board roles so that they can then make a decision of, okay, I'm going to move to, it might be a little bit less earning potential, but I've got that time freedom back. And interestingly, the way that we structure our program, because this is kind of a key point on the earning potential. Most people, when they look at a board seat, they think the earning potential is what you get paid in salary. To me, that is the least interesting part of the equation. There are so many more ways to monetize your board role. And this is why I talk about, like, once you're in the inner circle, and sitting in a board is often like the inner circle. You get to see holistically what the business is doing. You get to see where it's going to be spending money in the future. You get to see, like, what kind of acquisitions it's going to be doing. There are many, many ways that you can monetize a board seat. And I always give the example, like I said, I turn down most board seats now, but if I was offered the opportunity to sit on the board of SpaceX or OpenAI, I would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to be in that board.
Why?
Because you could leverage it so much, like those contacts and your ability to open the door to any investor you want to talk to, because you're sitting on the board of SpaceX. I mean, if you're sitting on the board of SpaceX, you can get a phone call with president of any country. Like, you can basically leverage that to get in to meet whoever you want. And so that's the way to think about it, is like, salary, like I said, salary is the least interesting. It's a nice to have, but there are plenty of boards that our members join because they can immediately see how they can monetize them in ways. And maybe it's that they just want to learn about that industry or get the key sales contacts in that industry. Maybe it's other people on the board. I've joined boards specifically, not because I was particularly interested in the company, but I was very interested in the other people sitting on the boards, and I wanted those relationships. So there's lots of ways, once you get on the pitch, to different ways to score goals.
And right now you are on how many boards?
No, so actually I'm not on any public boards. So I basically came off them. And I mean, I still get offers of board positions on a regular basis, but I just push it into Veblen directors. And I'd rather refer our members onto boards. And also in my core business at Unity Group, I think next year we'll probably take between 8 and 12 companies public. Now, I don't have the time to sit on the boards of those companies and look after our investments. So it makes much more sense for me to give those opportunities to other people who can get that experience, can get that learning, and can represent our interests on those boards. So yeah, that's the way I do it now.
Love it. I'd love to do the next episode on how to bring a company public, because people listening here, they have a mid-sized company or maybe thinking about it. And I imagine there is some steps in preparation that would be good to know a few years before, because you have to structure it in a certain way before that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, that's probably a topic for a whole nother conversation. We've been doing this for about 10 years now, and we've got the process down pretty quick process. And most of the companies that we take public, as long as they can get their financials in order, and they've got a good equity story, we can normally do it in 3 to 6 months. Whereas, traditionally you will end up paying an investment bank a huge amount of money, and they basically, their model is, okay, we can do this for you in 3 months, but you need to put us on a retainer. And so you start paying them 30,000-40,000 euros a month. And then at the end of 3 months, they say, yeah, we're nearly there, but we just need this whole list of stuff from you that we forgot to tell you about at the beginning. And so you spend another 3 months getting all of that data for them, and they go, oh, there's just one more thing, this list that you could do. And so they have a reverse incentive to take you public quickly because you're just giving them free money. So we have a different model. We take equity in the final public shell. We cover almost all of the costs, and we just work with companies where the founder is looking to really grow and scale the business. Going public is a terrible way to exit. It's a fantastic way to grow your business. But yeah, there's a whole, that's a much longer conversation than now.
Let's do that the next time. And if people want to join your program, where can they find your board seats program?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's probably a good place to find me. And then veblendirectors.com is the Veblen website. And I do regular webinars and get a free copy of my book if you sign up on the webpage and all that good stuff. And yeah, say hello to me on LinkedIn. Mention this podcast and I'll be nice to you.
Callum Laing, everyone. Thank you, Callum, so much for being on the show. See you soon.
Pleasure, Simon. It's been fun.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90 days.
What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprint's blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled